Now, going on that same day that that email was written, we have a response. She writes an email copying Catherine Starkey, Commissioner, and copying Clark Hobby. So again, this is the Assistant to the Board of County Commissioners dealing with this issue, and in her email she says, "As you know, the property described in the letter is the Gulf Harbors Clubhouse, which is slated for a board and secure action as a result of the complaint filed by the Gulf Harbors Civic Association earlier this year. Commissioner Starkey has been actively working with Clark Hobby as well as members of the Gulf Harbors Civic Association to help the parties bring about a possible purchase of the golf course and accompanying clubhouse." And she says, "If the board's secure action has not yet occurred, is it possible to place this matter in abeyance for a period of time until the parties work through their purchase issue?" Guys, read it for yourself. Now she also sends, it's the same topic, she also sends an email to Art, who's the president of the Civic Association. Same day, June 26, 2015. She writes, "Hi Art, I wanted to keep you in the loop on the Gulf Harbors Clubhouse. Clark Hobby recently contacted us because the owners of the clubhouse received a letter from Community Development stating that they were going to board and secure the building. He asked if we would be able to hold this action in abeyance temporarily if it has not yet taken place." Again, read it for yourself. So, from all of this, it would appear that to avoid incurring any expenses that might affect the lien holders, the county was asked to stand down on boarding the clubhouse, and they agreed, which, by the way, is a violation of their own county ordinances. So for me, that explains why, at least since 2015, we were being told that nothing could be done to get the clubhouse boarded up. Well, nothing until Diane Kobernick jumped into that issue and stayed on top of the county to force them to enforce their own ordinances, and the clubhouse finally did get boarded up. Surprise, surprise. Then another one of our residents, Ken Dabbs, also stepped up to hold the county accountable to take the next step, which was to demolish the building under their blighted buildings ordinances. And that is the only reason why the clubhouse is finally gone today. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, the county and the lien holders were willing to let that hazardous condition continue to be a threat in our community, all while they were trying to get the purchase pushed through so they could be paid. Okay, the next topic that I want to cover, I think I've made my point. The next topic that I want to cover here is on a little bit about the valuation of the property itself. And you've heard some of that already. Now, I've got a letter from Keith Wiley, who is still the head of ELAM, and he's writing to the owner of the golf course back in 2014. He says, "We have completed the appraisal process required for negotiation. Taking this information into account, along with the current real estate market, we are offering $166,000 fee title for all the property." Look at it for yourself. So, in 2014, the county was ready to offer $166,000. That's what they thought it was worth. Then they did an appraisal, a realistic appraisal. That's what they thought it was worth. Now remember, we're being told that the seller turned down a cash offer of $1.2 million to allow the county another chance to buy it. And this is the same county that already offered him $166,000. Makes a lot of sense to me. Now in 2015, the county did do another appraisal, and it came back at $275,000. That's a year later. Now, obviously, this wasn't going to be enough to justify a price of $1.2 million that the seller and the lien holders wanted. So what to do? Well, now we're going to see that there was a process going on where the county had to get an appraisal high enough to justify that higher price. Kind of putting the cart before the horse. I mean, usually you get an appraisal, figure out what it's worth, and then you offer that. In this case, they decided what they wanted to pay, and they're trying to get an appraisal to justify the price. Okay, so that wasn't going to work. Now here's what they came up with as an idea. They couldn't get the price high, they couldn't get the appraisal high enough. And one of the issues with that is that you've heard before is that any appraiser is going to base the value of the property on what a developer could actually build on the land. And there's a problem, because when the appraiser valued it in its current zoning, in its current condition, what currently could be done, he couldn't get it above $275,000. So they had to rethink it. They came up with another idea. November 9th, 2015, we have the county attorney writing to Clark Hobby. He says, "Can't you handle this through special instruction to the appraiser to appraise the property based on the assumption that it is vested for 120 units? This is basically what we did for Timber Oaks." Now Clark Hobby answers him. He says, "Yes, we can." And he goes on to say, listen to this, he goes on to say, "The residents want this deal and are willing to pay for it." Now, I want to make a couple of points. First, they're trying to use assumptions to get a higher appraisal. Second, notice the date, November 2015. Mr. Hobby is saying that the residents want this and are ready to pay for it. I'm a resident, and at the time, nobody ever asked me if I wanted to pay for it. Furthermore, in 2015, I was even a member of the Civic Association. And I never even knew that discussions were even going on about purchasing the golf course. So, my question is, just which residents... So my question is, just which residents was Mr. Hobby referring to that wanted this deal and were willing to pay for it? Any of you? Well, there's more. There's another email now that keeps going, discussing how many units they should assume could be built in order to justify the higher appraisal. Now, here we go. February of 2016. Now, this is starting to come very close to the time when they were coming to us to ask for a vote for this, to buy the property. We're starting to get to that time frame. February of 2016 now. Clark Hobby writes a letter to Keith Wiley, remember, who's the head of Eland. And he says, "I talked to David about it, and he just thought we could have planning and development look at it to make sure it generally passes muster for a site plan. Planning and development does not need to take an exhaustive view and conduct extensive due diligence. It just needs to pass the smell test." It just needs to pass the smell test. Guys, I can't make this up. I'm good. Now, a few weeks later, we get an email from our Commissioner, Catherine Starkey. This is now at the end of February of 2016. And she's writing to Clark Hobby and Michelle Baker. And she writes, "Why is it taking a month for the reviewer to review the two appraisals? I do not want this to fall apart." Okay. Later that day, there's another email from Michelle Baker, who was the county administrator at the time. Remember, we're still talking about February 2016. And she's writing, Commissioner, we are asking our original appraiser to update his appraisal based on the new entitlement assumptions from planning and development. As the person who must stand in front of the board and the citizens and justify the ultimate deal, I need a better appraisal. We will continue to work aggressively towards reaching a defensible number. Now, the county finally ended up giving their appraiser, the direction to assume that 80 units could be built. Now, this appraiser, Mr. Todd Marr, is the same one who valued the property at $275,000 in 2015, without using any extraordinary assumptions, just as is, which, is one way to do it. In my view, the proper way to do it. Now, in his new appraisal, which he did in March of 2016, he writes multiple times in his appraiser in bold. Now, remember, he was engaged by the county to do this appraisal. So the county is the one who ordered this appraisal. Now he says, at the request of my client, I have valued the property as though the zoning and land use would allow 80 residential units, which is a hypothetical condition. With that assumption, he now values the property at $600,000. Now, as you've heard earlier, this compares with an appraisal that was ordered by Clyde Hobby for the seller and conducted by Tropical Realty Appraisal Services in 2015, that's the Dewey Mitchell Company, where they valued the property at $1.7 million. For that appraisal, they used an assumption that 90 homes could be built. Now, finally, let me touch on the environmental issue. The county received a Phase 1 environmental report on October 27, 2016. Now that date is significant because in the original purchase contract that was signed earlier in 2016, it said that they were planning to close the property by September 18th of 2016. Something seem wrong to you with those dates? It would seem that they should have ordered the environmental report a lot earlier than they did if they had any intention of having it before closing. But this is not inconsistent with past practices. Previous to this deal, and you've heard, the county bought golf courses at Magnolia Valley and Timber Oaks using MSBUs. And they did so without conducting any environmental testing first. Only recently, when they started to build on those sites, were they forced to do testing, and they found that it was contaminated. Now, we have asked the county just who's going to pay for all that remediation cost. They haven't answered. My suspicion is that those MSBUs that were put on those neighborhoods are going to be charged with all the environmental costs. And I don't think they want to tell us that while they're still trying to convince us to buy the Gulf Harbors golf course. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that had this lawsuit not been filed, the county would already have bought the Gulf Harbors golf course. They would own it. And even today, we still don't know the full extent of the environmental impact on that land. The Phase 1 report from October recommended a Phase 2, which was done, and identified the presence of 4 contaminants, including arsenic. Oh, just turn my phone off. Put it in the phone. It's strong. Okay. So the Phase 1 recommended Phase 2, and the Phase 2 found arsenic along with 4 other contaminants that exceeded the residential target levels that were required by the FDP, in some cases by quite a bit. Now the seller did their own analysis, and although the levels weren't the same, they still identified the presence of these same contaminants. Now, to truly know the extent of the contamination, more samples have to be taken, and the county was prepared to do it. So, in this email from Pasco County, addressed to Mr. Clyde Hobby for the seller, they write, The Phase 2 recommends additional testing in order to obtain a report which would advise on remediation. Additionally, the county obtained recommendations from a third party, Atkins,